It's loading. Hey, everybody. Welcome, welcome. Thank you for joining us. I am Ashley Duell. I'm CEO of Duell Dev LLC. Been doing government contracting for more than a decade. And Natasha, please introduce yourself for those who don't already know you, that is.
I'm Natasha Velez with NBS Strategic Solutions, and I have been doing government contracting for over 10 years now. Was a CFO for many years, was a business developer for many years, HR, you name it, I've done it. So I'm really excited to be here.
Thank you so much. So we are playing around with this live streaming. So as we get used to it, you'll have to bear with us. But we are going to be here every Thursday at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And we are here to answer your burning government contracting questions. So
Yeah.
we hope that you will join us and continue to tune in every week. Natasha, what are we talking about today?
Oh man, I think we should just go right in. Let's talk about the thing that exists that everybody wants to be a part of, the middleman approach. Um, I think that there is a lot of misconceptions out there where we see these $1 billion YouTube videos. I've won 40 million, I've won 10 million, I've won 50 billion, of people just throwing numbers out there and no real information as to how they won that, and they won that, if they actually won that, or if it's part of an IDIQ, how long it takes to win that funding, if it's shareable upon subs, what your gross profit margins on. I mean, I could be there all day, but I think that's the biggest thing we should talk about first.
Let me just start by saying that there's a lot of questions that you guys are going to ask us along the way where our answer is going to have to be it depends until we ask follow-up questions, right? So the reason I'm telling you that is because it would be impossible in government contracting to say that this or that strategy is going to work for everybody.
Yeah.
Every industry here is different. So, with that in mind, let me talk first a little bit about what this middleman thing is. So, middlemaning hypothetically is when you are the prime contractor, you then are bidding on the solicitation with the government, and you plan to sub out 100% of the work. So, when we say middleman, that's what we're meaning. Now,
You are
is
the
there
prime
is
contractor.
there a place for that in government contracting? Absolutely. But is it a strategy? That's where I tend to disagree. I feel like it's more of a stepping stone, don't you?
Yeah, I think it's a little kind of like misleading because there's so many components to it. Um, you still have to be a project manager. I mean, you're not going to, I mean, we can go for the simplest of terms, right? We could say, all right, well, I want to buy licenses for the government, right? Cool. That's easy enough. I mean, there isn't a lot of work, but right? But you still have to buy the right license. You have to make sure that the government's getting what they need and what they want. You still have to invoice. You still have to make sure that they receive the right, material or license. There are a lot of things in the middle, and the government could be overly complicated sometimes. Sometimes if it comes to hardware, they want certain things shipped a certain way. And sometimes the vendor doesn't work to the way the government works. So you might have to get it delivered to your house, and then you have to, adjust it and do it according to the government. So there's so much in that solicitation where there's compliance. And so I feel like people go in and they're just like, I need to write a proposal. I need to price it, 10, 20%. And then I'm just going to get rich. I'm going to make like $1 million. And it's like, not really. That hardware costs you, if it's $1 million contract, that hardware costs you probably 980,000. You might make 20,000, maybe shipping, taxes, risk, price fluctuations, and then it might take you a year to get that fund, that payment. So I'm not saying it's the worst thing, but it's just not realistic to assume that you're going to be a millionaire off of that approach, I would say. You might
I
make a
have
couple of fees.
seen a lot of success from contractors, taking this approach when they first start out.
Mhm.
But 95% of the time that I have seen that success rate, it comes from that business owner, even being a new entrepreneur, having some level of experience in that industry.
I would
One
agree.
of our community members, I won't name drop because I know he's very shy, but one of our community members recently won his very first contract, a 5-year IDIQ.
That's awesome.
So there's one base for option. He priced it out, he submitted, he responded. Um, but he has experience and 25 years experience in the industry for which he was bidding in. So he was able to kind of utilize that professional experience, to be able to quickly understand what the government was looking for. He understood the specs
Yeah,
that the contract was calling for. He understood, how this product makes its way through the supply chain. He knew the supplier already. And
good.
that's one very prevalent challenge I've been seeing out there.
Yeah.
My strategy has always been follow the data and get in there before the solicitation ever hits the street, right? You follow the money. And with everything that I'm seeing now with this middleman strategy, it's almost forcing contractors to they see the solicitation, then they source the product. Well,
Hmm.
if that solicitation is due, let's just say 30 days, and that's being generous, right?
Yeah.
It takes longer than 30 days for me to build a relationship with the supplier to where I know for a fact that I'm coming in competitive on price. This stuff takes time.
Right.
So my first few bids are probably not going to win if it's an LPTA contract, right?
Right.
So I'm seeing a lot of folks winning because they're pricing so low that they're barely making a profit, if at all.
And
Your
then they
subs
jump out
have
of
to
the
get
market.
Yeah, your
They give
subs have to
up.
get paid. I
Yeah.
mean, I hate to sound cliche, but pretty sure we've all seen the movie War Dogs by now. And if you haven't, go watch it. That's what happens when you don't pay your subs, right?
Yeah.
So um, there are some that are glamorizing this as a strategy. And when you look at where the middleman approach is viable, we're talking like simplified acquisitions,
Hmm.
under 250,000.
Yeah,
And I got
micro.
to tell you, my clients, and this might be true also for your clients, please, feel free to confirm or deny. They're not in it for simplified acquisitions. They're
Yeah.
going after the big multi-million dollar long-term contracts,
Millions of
building
dollars.
strategic teams and, finding the avenues
Yep.
to work with the other companies that complement their services well so that they can expand.
Right.
None of them to date have asked me, hey, can you source this product, right?
Right.
So I'm very strategy focused. Is that the same for you?
Yeah, I would agree. So when people come to me, I gotta say the first thing they initially come to me is like, I need a proposal writer, right? And I'm like, no,
No,
you don't.
no, I don't.
No, you don't. You don't know what you need. You need capture management, you need business development. I could run those hours, I could run that meter and do some
Run the
blind
clock
bidding.
up. Yep.
Yeah, and you'll never win. You might hit, and I'm talking about luck. You might
Well,
hit here and there. Um, but it's not a strategy for longevity, right? We talk about that P win rate. So we're talking like if you got 20 proposals, how many of those 20 proposals are you winning? And don't be fooled. I mean, proposal writing is expensive. And it's not always the easiest. Now, if you're talking about a $10,000 gig, then it's pretty easy. But if you're talking about millions of dollars, which is what most people are after, with no past performance and no relationship, probably not going to get it. Um, I really do try to push people, they watch the YouTubes and they're like, I want to be a millionaire. And I'm like, that's amazing. We all do. We'll get there, but it takes time. It's a process. You got to put in the work, the return of investment right now. And that's where we come in with capture management, business development, building relationships. It matters. And I think there's a lot of misguidance in regards to stating that you don't need a relationship, events aren't important, building with contracting officers don't matter. It does. I mean, contracting officers are people, and in all of sales, people buy from people they
From
trust
people.
and they like. So it's still people. And if you're just a page with all these technical verbiage that you probably stole on ChatGPT, and you send it off to some contracting officer acting like she hasn't gotten 20 other ones just like this, what puts you above the competition if you have no relationship with them? So I teach in my company to reach out prior, just like you do, before the solicitation. Do your sources soughts, do your RFIs, email, call, make sure you're at the events that they're at. Um, Look at the forecasts. Granted, it's not tomorrow, but you're not going to be a millionaire tomorrow. It's not how that works. And honestly, anything that's worth having is never easy. So
It's
more than
never
everybody.
easy. That's true. And there are some products, and there is a small market for the hard to source stuff, right? But typically, the government, in my experience and in my client's experience, the
Yeah.
government likes you first, and then they ask you to source that hard to find product, right?
Yep.
It's very rarely the other way around.
Right.
So Unison is a great place to start out, for those of you that are in your full-time job. But don't forget about the relationships, right? If I do the homework and I know that the Army, the Navy, and FEMA buy what I sell, I'm going to be working those angles well before I ever see a solicitation.
Right.
So my pipeline is now 1, 2 years out. I'm not looking at just the next 30 days because let's take soup six, right? We're on number six now,
Yeah.
right? Sorry, that thing hasn't been competed in like 10 years. So
No.
no, it was a 5-year base with 5-year option. Government
Mhm.
exercised their option. This is the one of the most favored long-term IT contracts on the market. It's hot
Mhm.
because it's a simplified method of purchase.
Mhm.
It's very easy and quick for the government, even faster from what I hear than a GSA schedule. Don't quote me on that because I am by no means an 1102. Bless all of your hearts if you're listening. Robert, if you're listening. Love you guys. You do an amazing job. But I will say that you're not going to come out of the gate and get access to something like the Soup 6, right? You have to start as a subcontractor. Some of these contract vehicles even state that you have to have worked on this vehicle already to be a prime on that vehicle, right?
Right.
And so many are discounting the strategy and the business development side. If you're focused on this much of the pie, on only
Mhm.
things that you can middleman, there's billions, trillions to capture that
Yeah.
you're leaving on the table by
Right.
having such a narrow focus.
I would agree. And I think that you bring up a really good point. It's the bigger scope. It's not just this and these small margins, because that's really what you're looking at. You're like 250,000, you're looking at small margins because in reality, these are taxpayer dollars. The government's not going to let you make a 70% profit. You're not going to make all of that, right? Um, but you will make a lot more money if you're bigger and a little more patient. And you're right. It takes, I've seen people put in 2, 3 years, but then they get 40 billion.
Wow.
I'll take 2, 3 years for 40 billion.
That's
I'll
not bad
wait.
at all. I'll take it. Um,
But you put the work in, you build the relationships, you find teaming partners, you say, hey, listen, you do what I do. I go and you would say spending. And I always teach people, find the people that are doing what you're doing in your area. I'm such a believer in collaboration. I don't know where we get this concept that, everybody is out for that needs to be out for their own. Like if you collaborate and you partner and you team and you find someone that has past performance and can leverage an opportunity that you don't have footing in, then why wouldn't you do that? You can reach out to people that are doing what you're doing. You too can leverage not only your certifications, but you can leverage past performance, knowledge, whatever one, even connections, honestly. So all of that is vital resources in helping you win bigger contracts. If you just put in the time versus staring at sam.com, excuse me, sam.gov and just be like, this one I think I could do, and then da, 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 and sending
And
it and
you
wishing for the
spend
best.
4 hours reading it, another 60 hours responding to it.
Yeah.
And little did you know that you probably didn't stand a chance at winning. And I hate to see folks investing time, money, and resources. Like, if you want to win $1 million in government contracts in 2024, you
Yeah.
better have 10 million in your pipeline. You're
Girl,
not going to
we're
win them
pushing
all.
for 25 million. I'm like, if you
25
want that
million.
5.1 ratio, which means out of that 25, I want to see 5 million a year. I'm pushing.
And
But you
that should
got,
only increase over time. But that's a
yes,
reasonable expectation for someone that's new, right? For
yes,
someone that's been at this for a while, our metric doesn't become, oh, I want to win a contract. It becomes, I want to increase my win rate. Out of
yes,
every 20 I bid on, instead of winning two, I want to win 10.
yes,
So it becomes completely necessary for you to have a strategy.
yes.
And tell me if I'm wrong, but I've had a lot of people more or less freak out lately about the whole self performance thing. Well, what am I going to do? How am I? I'm only one person. How am I going to self perform? And I'm like, look, with just a system for your HR process, right?
Mhm,
Really self performance is just a matter of whether you pay someone 1099 or W-2.
mhm.
If you need to hire someone contingent upon an award to make sure that you meet the requirements of that solicitation and bring them on only if you win, now keeping in mind you do have to support that contract for the
Right.
first 60 days, granted invoicing is correct,
Mhm.
but that would be a great way for you to utilize a full-time employee, but not have to come up with as much upfront costs. And that's a strategy that a lot of the big guys use. They'll
Right,
interview the key personnel that they need, they'll conduct the interviews, they'll execute the hiring process, and they'll provide an offer letter contingent on the award.
right,
So if they don't get the award, they're not footing out the expenses for the full-time employee.
right.
So, having a payroll system, these are fundamental business things that need to take place, before you really get serious about investing time, money, and resources blind bidding on contracts. I
I
have
would
clients
agree.
who won't even entertain the thought of a solicitation unless they have met with the customer. If they
Mhm.
see an opportunity that comes up on SAM and they didn't see it, it wasn't on their radar, there's no way that they will have time to execute their capture process
Mhm.
effectively to gain the qualitative intel that they need to influence that requirement. So, really big on the source of thought and RFIs, guys. I mean, if you're newer to the space and you're spending any time bidding, those can be great opportunities, to showcase and demonstrate your experience, to provide new ideas, to influence the requirements. Like Josh Frank says, ghost your competition. If you guys haven't checked out Game Changers podcast, you definitely should.
Yeah.
Um,
And the
Highly recommend. Talked about
I read
tactics and
all the books.
strategies. Me
Those
too.
are the
I'm I'll
good,
be in the next
good,
one. In fact, I'm super
good
excited
strategy.
about that.
Get it.
Super.
They're good strategies. And I think that someone asked me in my group the other day, and I thought this was the craziest question, but it's fair. Do events even matter? Do they matter? And I was
Oh
like,
my.
absolutely, girl.
Oh my.
Um, Absolutely. Not only
Yes.
are you meeting your potential clients, you're also meeting potential teaming partners, primes. I mean, you don't know who you're going to meet, and you literally leave that off the table if you don't even attend. You can't get a lot of business development done or sales done hiding behind your laptop, even though we all like to do it so much. I'm not
Uh,
one.
yeah, no comment.
Here we are. But
Yeah,
I do
here we are behind our laptops.
I know. I make it a point to try to go to at least two events a month. Um, and honestly, I haven't gone to an event and said to myself, well, it was a waste of time. I've literally met with people, and if nothing comes out of it that moment, a month or two later, I'll get a call. I'm like, hey, I met you at this event. And I'm like, I don't remember who you are. And then automatically it's like, we're talking business, and before you know it, it leads to money. But good sales is an investment, and it's
Yes.
not quick and easy. So events are
You have
super
to have a process. You have to have
important.
a process, right? That is one thing that I do in coaching a lot of the time. When you're starting to get some traction and you're like,
Mhm.
okay, we have some profit, let's plan what events we're going to attend. A lot of my clients will pull me in on that and they'll say, okay, what do we need to do? How do we need to best prepare? And we'll
Mhm.
literally spend hours just on the prep.
Yep.
We want to know who's going to be in the room,
Mhm.
what out of our targeted agencies and primes, what titles are going to be there, who is going to be exhibiting,
Right.
what sessions are going to be presenting, because a lot of them will have educational sessions. Like I went to 8A this last year. It was in New Orleans, probably not the best first location for an 8A. I was a little distracted by Mardi Gras, I will say, but
I
it
think
was
they're having it in
great.
Georgia this year, in
Yeah,
Atlanta.
in Atlanta.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
I'll
And
be there.
uh-huh. It was fantastic. I mean, and this was my first conference post COVID. So, just being with that many people, I mean, there were 1,800 businesses that were there, multiple agencies. There was one Apex Accelerator that showed up, and it was amazing. We sat at the dinner table and I watched conversations and teaming agreements kind of forming in front of my eyes. And the one
Yeah.
thing I tell my clients, aside from the prep, what's even as important is your follow-up game. I don't care
Yes.
how tired you are when you get back to that hotel. You pull out those business cards and you send an email to each and every person that you had a conversation with. One
Yep.
thing I do is I'll take the business card because my memory isn't all that great, right? If I have my Monday CRM on my mobile, I'll just punch it in, but I'll write myself a little note on the business card, like, what we talked about and what our next
Right.
steps are, so that when I'm drained and my brain is fried and I get back to the hotel
Mhm.
room at night, I can reference that conversation, stay memorable, and stay top of mind.
Yep.
You can't always tell on paper, guys, like what businesses, what gaps they might have. If I'm a business and I've got a government contract, do you think I'm going to admit publicly that there's a gap? No, that's going to come through a conversation that I have with you.
Yeah.
To where you're going to learn now, hey, you're really good at this. I have a gap in this. How can we work
Mhm.
together? And those organic conversations is literally the most effective way to develop these relationships. So if you don't show up, you're not putting your hat in the ring.
I would agree. And I gotta say that I think you bring up a really good point. So when it comes to, for instance, the Monday.com, right? I really push for people to have some sort of organization. And I'm not talking about just your hi hellos and your contacts, because we put people in our contacts and we forget about them, right? It's like pictures. We used to look at them, now we just forget them in our role, and we like, oh, that's still there. So as you have to have some sort of like organization, right? All these people, you never know. They may not play a need right now. They may not have a capability that you're in need of at this moment, but they could later on. You could see a solicitation a year from now and be like, oh, who do I know that does that? Create some sort of a CRM system. Monday.coms are really good. Use Some people use HubSpot, some people use Airtable. There's like a ton of them. I think it's ClickUp. There's another one.
Whatever
Um,
you use, make sure
whatever
you just
you
use it. Yeah.
Yeah, like have your contacts. Who are they? What state are they in? What are their core capabilities? What are their NAICS codes? Do a little research on them. Go on USA Spending.
What are
If
their
have they won?
socioeconomics?
Yeah. Have they won anything? have they want anything lately that you can help them with? It all really is about the research. It really
Comes
is.
the time, I gotta say, if I were to split
Hmm.
time for my most successful clients, 80% of their time is spent on the relationships and the capture.
Yeah,
20% is spent on the solicitation.
I
I'm
agree.
not talking about middleman contracts.
Yeah,
I'm bigger, think bigger
yeah,
than, simplified acquisitions.
I agree.
There are different rules, different thresholds have different rules. So if you want to play in the larger thresholds, you are going to be subject to additional rules, but it's not necessarily hard. You just need to
Mhm.
be aware of them. You need to implement the proper processes,
Yeah.
and quality control and make sure that that's documented. It's not impossible.
No,
It just
and
takes a little time.
I think some of the things also, one of the things I think we didn't mention though also is subcontracting plan. Um,
Yes.
sometimes a contracting officer will put an amendment in the contract that states that if you're awarded this, a certain percentage has to be done of the work has to be done by the prime because they're getting used to this and they want you to do a good percentage of the work. So they'll be like, you can only share 49% of the work and you have to do 51% of the work, especially if it's like set aside based. Unless you are, for instance, like if you're an 8A and they want 51% work done by an 8A company, you can't, unless you're partnering with another 8A, which is, I mean, there goes your teaming again. You essentially would have to take on 51% of the work. And then I have people tell me, how am I supposed to do that if I don't really intend to do the work? And I'm like, good point. You
That is a
can't.
really good point.
You
You're
can't.
pigeonholing yourself
Yes.
if you're not setting yourself up in that manner. And it may not be a today thing,
Yeah, yeah.
you know. I understand the need to get one contract, make a little profit before you can reinvest in systems and whatnot. But it's realistic to think that, all you have to do is form an LLC, have a SAM, and get a contract. Like, what happens if during performance your back office and your internal infrastructure is not set up appropriately? How will you perform? If it's products and you're not familiar with mil spec standards,
Hmm.
what happens when you foot the bill for those products? They get delivered and the government turns it away, and then you're like, oh no, that was
Yeah,
$20,000. I remortgaged my house. I've heard that before. I've heard this
yeah,
before, and it
yeah.
makes it necessary to just kind of set the record straight on the risks associated here, I think.
I would agree. And I think that comes in with pricing,
Yeah.
knowledge of compliance, knowing your, federal acquisition regulations. I know it seems like a lot, but educating yourself or finding a mentor that can help you is really key because, the things that they don't talk about is like the compliance, the auditing, everything that comes with working with the government essentially. And I think you and I know it's so much bigger. There's components of the Department of Labor. There's SEA regulations. I mean, we could be here for days talking about every regulation there is, but I don't think people
Eventually we
talk
will.
about
We've got 52 weeks in 2024. There's 52 far parts.
we have
No, I'm
plenty of
just kidding.
regulations
I'm
a
kidding,
lot.
guys.
And it could be really boring, but you're
Kidding,
gonna care
guys.
about those regulations and you're gonna start reading them when the Department of Labor hits you up and says they're coming to do a quick audit. All of a
That's
sudden you care
true.
about your
That's very
rights
true. You'll wish you did. But we're definitely not here to be boring. We're here to make GovCon fun
then.
because it is a very dry topic. So I promise we're not gonna do a whole segment on the FAR. Will we talk about it? Yes, because you do need to know it, but that is not going to be the focus.
That is a book I think that's bigger than the Bible. It's huge. It's like this thick.
Thousands of pages, thousands of
So
pages.
many. Don't do it. Don't do it.
I mean, for those of you who are curious, the FAR lives at acquisition.gov. Feel free to absorb and bring your questions. So, in closing, we are about out of time, unfortunately, tonight, which is a bummer because I'm kind of having fun here.
It's all
Um,
We'll
we
do it again.
are, yes, we will do it again every Thursday. So we started kind of in the holidays.
Mhm.
We will be here next week, and officially 2024 every Thursday, 7 p.m. Join us on live on Facebook, Instagram, or YouTube. We also have a form. So if you have a burning question, that form will allow you to submit. We do need to ask, what products and services you provide because the answer may change depending on what industry you're in. And we want to make sure that we're, delivering value, you're getting your questions answered, and we're being consistent with the rules and regulations of your space. So that form link will be attached to pretty much every post about this podcast. So please do look out in the Facebook groups and on our feeds for that. Any final thoughts, Natasha?
Happy holidays.
Happy holidays, everybody. I hope you enjoy some time off for sure.
I know.
Enjoy the time off with your family. We hope to see you here next week and in 2024. If you're bored on Thursday night next week, feel free to hop on. We'd love to hear your questions.
Bye.
Hi, everyone.
Mm, mm, mm.